Hello, everybody. I'm Dana Brooks, and welcome to another episode of the EmPower Hour brought to you by the EmPower Plant by Facing Brooks. I am joined today with our usual panel, some new and recurring, and some aren't here today, but we've got Kimmy Hogan here. She's my law partner. We've got Lori Finn, our marketing director. It's her idea for this topic today, so I want to give her full credit for that. We've got Whitney Morris, the EmPower Hour EmPower Plant producer, back with us, and I believe we may have the empowered man in our law firm, Jimmy Fasig, or at least somewhat impersonating him on his Zoom. So welcome, everybody. I want to tell you about this great guest we have. We have got Emily Mitchem from the Refuge House. She's the executive director there, but she has been there a long time. Relatively recently named executive director, but we're going to be talking about some pretty serious stuff, but it's time to talk about it. It's time to get it out there and let people dispel some rumors, talk about some resources, but we're going to be talking about rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, things that predominantly affect women, although they can affect men too. But we're going to talk about the resources that are out there and make sure people do feel like there's plenty of help for them, especially in the community that Refuge House serves whenever they need it. So before we delve too far into that very serious topic, Whitney, what are we drinking today? Because Rose Caswick is not available to us today. So Whitney has made a smorgasbord of cocktails for our selection. And I understand there's some mixed feedback. So why don't you tell us about those?
That would not shock me because I made them all 8 cocktails in 10 minutes. So
that's the best beginning to a lot of good stories.
If the proportions aren't, ideal, that's probably why. So because the onus is on me to get the drinks going, I did what we had. So that's gin, Aperol. We have in a little, I think it's called an Aperol gin sour. I don't know.
Which one is that?
That's the orange one. Yeah.
Ooh, it's pretty.
I don't have it in front of me. I forgot to grab one, but and then we had Cinco de Mayo the other day or yesterday. And so we had some leftover Corona, and I was like, I'm going to introduce the firm to an old college classic, and we're going to do a Corona Sunrise, which is horrid.
Yes, it is horrid. It's not great.
It's a horrid drink.
It's not great.
I got to tell you, I'm not going to be, posting reviews on this one either.
Yeah, and if you don't know what a Corona Sunrise is, it's Corona with a little bit out of it. Yeah, I would not drink that one, Kimmy. And it's got some grenadine and a shot of tequila in it. It's not great.
Whitney, back up Prosecco.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Whenever they come in here to do Champagne Friday tomorrow at 1, and they see I've already gotten into this, they're going to get mad at me. But anyway, well, thank you for doing that, Whitney. Effort, and those are extremely large shoes to fill. Rose puts so much into it, and she always has a story behind it. We're going to call this one in celebration of working moms, people who just have to go into the kitchen and make something happen with whatever the heck's in there and make it pretty and attractive and get people convinced to eat and drink it. So this is to working mothers and make it do with what you got. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
All righty. Let me introduce Emily. And Emily, tell us about yourself, your passion, how you spend your professional time, and what services you all offer, and how you help our community with Refuge House.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. Thanks for thinking of Refuge House and being willing to give this time to talk about these topics, which aren't always easy to talk about, and that's okay. I am passionate about being able to stand for the rights of people who are being oppressed in any way. And I found early in my career, I worked mostly in the correction settings, as a criminal rehabilitation counselor and substance abuse counselor. And I ended up, this was 20 something years ago, with a caseload full of men who'd been sexually abused as children, who had developed substance abuse problems and who had subsequent criminal activity. And they're incarcerated now with felonies, and their dads, and their brothers and their sons. And back then it was really taboo for boys and for men to talk about it. And there was just no resources. And it was so frustrating because there was nothing to do to help them, and people were scared to work with them. I moved on, I kind of went the other way. Then I started working with women. And then it was the same, the stories, every single time I did a biopsychosocial with someone, every single case file I opened up, the stories are all the same. I was molested by my mom's boyfriend. My dad turned me out in prostitution when I was 12. There was domestic violence in my household. I've been sexually assaulted 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And then after a few years of that, I was really looking around for what can we do to stop this? Why are we reacting, down the road when these people are adults, to something that happened to them when they were children? Where's the prevention? How do I raise some public anger about this? And I came across this job at Refuge House as a community counselor or something, I don't know. But it was just kind of like, the fuel to the flame, if you will, about what I wanted to do and how much it means to me to be able to provide those intervention services to people who have been harmed, and also to be able to try to get out there and get ahead of it so that we don't exist. It would be ideal if we just put Refuge House out of business, because we did so much community education, so much awareness, and there was such strong support systems in our community that stood against and didn't tolerate violence against women and men, and particularly sexual assault. So what we do at Refuge House is we're a dual service provider. So we do domestic and sexual violence services. We're the certified agency for Leon and 7 surrounding counties. So we have rural counties in our service area also. And we have 2 emergency shelters for domestic and sexual violence, and for people who are exiting prostitution and sexual exploitation systems. We have transitional housing, which is open to, again, anybody who's experienced that type of victimization for up to 2 years. People can stay there.
Wow, I didn't know it was that long.
I know. And we also recently were awarded HUD funding to be able to provide independent rental units to people. It's basically subsidized rent for people who don't need to be on campus, who maybe don't have the need for staff to be near them, or for some of the security gates to exist. And for sexual violence services in particular, we're very proud. We're one of the few in the state that we have a standalone sexual assault forensic clinic. That means that when someone is sexually assaulted, they don't have to, if we have a nurse on call, they don't have to go into the emergency room to receive a forensics kit there. We have a really nice, calming, pretty new clinic that people can come in, and we have an advocate that we send out that can go through the whole process with them. We have nurses almost 24 hours a day on call to come and do the exam. We have a separate office for law enforcement officers that are there. We have a waiting room for family. We have snacks for people. We have drinks available. We have a shower there for after the exam if somebody wants to go ahead and take that shower they've been waiting probably for a few hours to take. And so that's relatively new. That opened in 2017. Our numbers have skyrocketed since that time, with people coming forward wanting to have the forensics kit.
I have so many questions. Okay.
No, it feels a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I like the overview because I'm writing notes, so I make sure I don't forget things. First of all, what is your background? Are you a therapist?
I'm not. I had a bachelor's degree in psychology. I got right out of college, and there was this really scary, low-paying job at a rehab for felons, and I took it, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. That's not an environment for everyone, but it really was for me. I like working with that population. And so that's where I got, I think, really good training. And I think I got exposed to really, really good counselors and therapists when I was very young.
Yeah.
And that really helped me be able to figure out how to build rapport with people who don't trust anybody and don't trust the system. And even for, adult survivors of sexual assault, they're not trusting the system either, because it's scary and unknown. And, that's the biggest challenge when working with traumatized people, is that rapport building. So that's how I got started. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I got you. Kimmy Hogan, I'm thinking of you because I'm thinking of so many of our clients. who will come to us, or people who just call us in their cases. A lot of time, we can't always take a civil case against someone who acts in a way that victimizes someone in a sexual way, because usually they're not collectible, what we call collectible. And so if there's not someone who has vicarious responsibility over them, there's oftentimes not much we could do for these people who call us after experience this victimization. So we always want to be able to tell them about Refuge House and tell them other things. But Kimmy, I'm thinking, does this come up with you, even if you're representing somebody maybe in a slip and fall or a car crash, and then they have a need for something like this? Because we end up counseling people, well outside of what we're actually doing for them in a legal way. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the ways that this has come up in my practice are where women, I've only had women that this has happened to, have been raped at a hotel or at an apartment complex, and we bring a claim against the apartment complex or the hotel for basically not having good enough security. They make a promise that they're going to keep this hotel or apartment complex safe. They don't. And so that's what we do on the civil side of things. But what my clients have gone through sometimes before they get to us is going to the police, going through the prosecution of the person that did it to them. And Refuge House is a great resource for folks, because I do get some calls sometimes where people say, I just don't exactly know what to do. What is this going to look like?
Yeah. And I'm so glad we have this resource in our community, because when you just read about this or you follow the news about it, you hear so many women say, well, I went down to the police station and, it was so demoralizing and I couldn't bathe, and there's male cops and or people looking at you like they don't really, everything about it is, what were you doing? What were you wearing? Who'd you go there with? How much did you have to drink? It's everything that shifts the focus onto the conduct of the abused person. And they also will tell you sometimes law enforcement will dissuade them from trying to pursue charges. Tell them, you have no idea what this is going to do to you. You have to get out of school. You're going to be blackballed. You just really need to put this behind you and move on. How do you address issues like that at the Refuge House? I know you said that a lot of times they don't have to go to the hospital, but what other things do you do to kind of empower women to feel safe around law enforcement?
Everything you just said, we hear all the time and see it ourselves, unfortunately, when we're on site with the victim. The best thing that we can hope for is for our law enforcement agencies to really specialize their responding officers and their investigators so that they become what's called trauma informed, so that they're doing trauma informed law enforcement. And there's lots of opportunities for training out there for them, particularly through the Florida Coalition Against Sexual Violence. Our Tallahassee Police Department has taken advantage of that training. It's a challenge for them, I know, also because they have so much turnover. They're not everyone gets that trauma informed training, and it's really, the language is so critical that when that first interaction with a law enforcement officer and they say something like, well, why'd you drink that much? Or what were you wearing? Or, why didn't you walk with a friend home from the party? That shuts it down.
Right.
And it's so difficult to get them to come back after that. They just shut down. They don't want to go through it anymore. They don't want to go through it to begin with. So at Refuge House, what we try to do, what we offer people is an advocate. If you need somebody to go with you to talk to law enforcement, you're legally entitled to a sexual assault advocate from a certified rape crisis program in the state of Florida. That's your legal right. And are there agencies where the police don't inform people of that? Probably so. But we work really hard to get the message out there and to make sure that people know, and that law enforcement are aware, and that the hospitals are aware that this is in fact something that they are required to offer to the victim. When the advocate is present, we can help steer those conversations, maybe in a way that's more victim friendly and victim centered. We absolutely, and I know I have, when I've been on SANE calls, said, hey, Mr. Officer, can we talk outside for just a second? I just want to give you a little bit of feedback on kind of how this is being interpreted and received by this victim that I know you want to help, right?
Right.
Because you're a police officer, which means you're a good guy. And so we have ways that we're trained to be able to work with them and to be able to try to help improve communication and maybe help give them some tips and input on what they're saying. I think sometimes they really just genuinely, it doesn't occur to them that the choices of words they're using are going to be interpreted as I did something to deserve this, and you don't believe me.
I think it's it's almost an orientation thing, because if you're coming from a law enforcement perspective, you're probably thinking often you're more likely dealing with potential perpetrators, potential bad guys, bad actors. And so not everybody can just do that 180 flip and become a very empathetic, active listener and meet the person right where they are. And that's why I do think, although I don't like the fund of the term defunding the police, but I do like they're trying to do here with TPD, get some social workers involved. Maybe law enforcement isn't the best person to handle every aspect of that. Maybe do orient them mainly to, let's go see if there's a bad guy we can get. But the whole other piece of this is, let's help this person. And I hate hearing things like anybody dissuading someone from pursuing their rights, but your initial opening when you were talking about working with these men who had been victims of sexual violence and not speaking about it. I had a client when I was a clinical social worker, and I had a client at a psychiatric hospital, and he was came in because he was suicidal. And we started talking, and he just said, I'm just a beat down queer. I'm just an old beat down queer. And I said, well, tell me about that. Tell me about your relationships. He had never had a relationship outside of being sexually abused by a man for many, many years when he was little. He had never had sex with another man. He had never had sex with a woman, but he likes women. And so I said, did it ever occur to you maybe you're not gay? And no one had ever given him permission to see himself as something other than what that abuser had told him all of those years. And the guy was in his head, you wanted this, you wanted this. They're going to think you're a little, F word and all this kind of stuff. And your parents are going to discuss them. And this man was 50 years old before he finally hit so far bottom. He was thinking of ending his life. And he just came in, and a bunch of people he didn't even know who actually cared about him just gave him permission to see himself differently. So those interactions we have when we're very vulnerable, they can change a person's life. And so Absolutely. I'm very encouraged by what TPD is doing in trying to get the right resources in the right settings to help people. Lori Finn, let's hear from you, because you wanted to make sure we covered this very important topic. So tell us what you're thinking and the kind of information you would like Emily to share with us.
Well, thank you for being here, Emily. And I applaud you for what you do. And that's not always a job that everybody says, thank you for doing this. And you get a lot of recognition. So thank you for all that. I guess I wanted to make sure we brought it up because it should always be brought up. I feel like there's always a need for a reminder for it. And I also feel like there needs to be more awareness every day of all the resources for women out there. A lot of times on social media, the fun stuff gets floated up, or you're looking at shoes and now you're seeing, ads for shoes and this and that. But you need kind of these reminders of like, hey, you can go here and get this. Mm-hmm. And you've told me some things today that I didn't even know you did
at all.
And so I'm so thankful that you guys do that. But yeah, I guess I just really wanted to get the word out there some more.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you to follow up on what Lori's pointing out. What are the counties you serve? You talked about your area.
We have Leon County, then we also have Gadsden, Liberty, Franklin, and McCullough. And then going east, we have Jefferson, Madison, and Taylor County. Okay. Taylor has one of our emergency shelters. One of them is here, one of them is in Perry. And then the transitional housing is mostly available in Leon County, but we do have some available rental assistance for the outlying counties.
Let me hear from Jimmy Basic, because he, of course, loves his mother and loves his wife, and he really loves his 3 little girls. So what do you think of when you think about the resources for people in our community and in our surrounding areas, and what a refuge house is able to do for them and keep everybody that we care about and love safe?
Well, thank you for asking. First of all, I love Refuge House. In fact, my wife, Jeanette, used to volunteer for Refuge House. And so we know Refuge House close and personal. and think it's an absolutely fantastic organization. I just learned just now that that they provide the services for somebody that has been recently abused, and I think that takes it to a whole nother level for me, which is fantastic. But I will tell you one thing that I find extremely disheartening, and that is when the victim of abuse, rape, whatever sort of violence is first of all not believed. And I think that a lot of times is the initial reaction to many people is this person exaggerating? Is this person being histrionic?
Or trying to get somebody in trouble.
Trying to get attention, trying to get somebody in trouble. I think that's the initial reaction of a lot of people who have a general distrust for humanity, and unfortunately, the plague that has afflicted our society. And then the second part is, even if it's true, even if you're not lying for attention, it's your fault. And there's nothing more painful for a person that has been abused, whether it's a man or a woman, to be first of all accused of being a liar, and then secondly being accused of causing it themselves. And so it's a major problem. We have this problem with our clients. Our clients sometimes it's exactly the same thing with a lot of our clients have been, we do handle sexual abuse cases, but also just basically in a car accident, slip and fall or something like that, that next thing you know, exact same problem. You're lying because you're trying to get money for a case, or it's your fault. Because you didn't look where you were going, or because and a lot of times people are dissuaded from pursuing their legal rights, or they're dissuaded from going to the police or going to the refuge house or reaching out for help because of the fear of being blamed, and because of the fear of looking like they're trying to get attention, they're looking like a liar. And I think that's really, really a shame. So I think that one of the things that I would love, or that I love about the refuge house, is opening up the opportunity for someone to come into a comfortable situation where somebody's going to believe them, somebody's going to understand them and be empathetic toward them. That to me is powerful. That is extremely needed. It's a need that our society absolutely has to have if we're going to move forward in a positive direction for the people that really need it the most, the people that have been hurt the most.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to get to a couple of comments, because Emily, you are a popular guest, lady. You are generating some good buzz. Zan Walker says hello. Let's see, Angela Carter, very informative. She's appreciating this. We've got, they want to share, let's see, we're sharing some resources on Instagram. Hannah Bland said she'd love to outreach. She's so glad to catch this live. Is there any way for someone to help and get involved? Are you looking for volunteers? This is a very important conversation, Elizabeth Hughes says. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about if somebody wants to help, how do they do that, volunteer? Because this is not one of these things that just give out the address and you show up and just be nice. There's got to be safety protocol followed. So how do people volunteer, and how do they donate? You need money.
Absolutely. We kind of, with COVID, had to shut down a little bit of our volunteer, but now we're opening it back up. So to be able to volunteer with us, you just need to go on our website, www.refugehouse.com, and there's a Get Involved tab, and under there you find information about volunteering. We provide some really robust training, some very good training to help people be prepared for working with our clients. There's many different places that people can volunteer, but our sexual violence program, that same program I was talking about, where the victims come for their forensic exams, those advocates, many of them are volunteers. And so what that entails is going through the training, shadowing some seasoned advocates for a little while, And then just whenever you can take a shift, that you would schedule yourself for that shift. And when there's a call, you go and you work with the victim. And again, we give lots of opportunity for training and shadowing, so nobody feels like they're walking into this clinic with this victim and they don't know what to do. And there's always a supervisor on backup for the people to call to be able to talk to them. So that's a really great opportunity for volunteering. I think most people that participate in that program find that it's really a life-changing and very meaningful experience to them. And as far as donations, same thing on our page. You can find our donations tab. We have a PayPal account. We take donations pretty much any way that you can give them to us. We rely on donations for, as a nonprofit, we're restricted to our budgets, and what we're allocated, what our allocations really are is to salary. So everything else at Refuge House comes from donations. The air conditioner breaks down, we need donations. We need a car for the same program, that's donations. So we rely heavily on our community for support. We really appreciate that our community always reaches out and meets our needs for us.
I want to shift just real quick and talk about the domestic violence type services rather than the purely sexual assault type of thing, because we're talking about people who are trying to leave bad, unsafe, abusive homes. And I think you said they can come and if they meet certain, I don't know what your established criteria are, but they can live up to 2 years in some of these places. But and then you also hear this, that people sometimes need to go back and forth as many as 8, 10, 12 times before they finally leave for good. So I wonder, what you can offer these people, because sometimes they leave with the clothes on their back and then have to leave in the middle of the night. But they need to find a job. They need to have transportation to and from work. Sometimes they just need to be able to get to the shelter. So what happens to somebody who's just like, they can't take it anymore and they've got their shot and they want to get out at 3 a.m? How do they even get to you?
They can call law enforcement. We do have a really great relationship with Tallahassee Police Department for bringing in people to our shelter. The victim advocates and all of the other county law enforcement other offices are also fantastic, and they know where we are and they can bring. What happens is a victim would need to call our hotline, which is 681-2111. And then you would speak to the hotline advocate, who would do like a little quick screening, a little assessment of where you are. And then based on our bed space, based on if we have any availability, they can bring someone in right away. If we can't bring someone in, then we try to find them emergency shelter elsewhere. Sometimes that includes hotel rooms.
Okay.
To be able to just get somebody safe really quick, particularly in the rural counties where their safety planning, their exit plan may include a large geographical rural area where things are different and there's no public transportation. So we individually do that safety plan and that exit planning with people as they call our hotline. And then once they're there, once they get into shelter, emergency shelter is community living. I am not going to sit here and make any bones about it. It's not easy to live in a community living area with a bunch of strangers, especially when you're traumatized. Your kids are in tow and they want to go home because they miss their dog and their dad and their bed. And you're sitting here in a place that's not home with people who are also traumatized, and many of them experiencing, anger issues and different types of frustrations themselves. So that's hard. It's a big ask for somebody, for Refuge House to say, trust us, come into our system. We're going to take care of you. I like to be upfront and say, though, that emergency shelter is going to be a challenge for most people. Once they get in there, they're given a case manager. And if they need help finding a job, we do that. We get them clothes, we get them food, we give them all the basics they need. We have gas card vouchers, we have transportation assistance. If they want to move, if mom lives up in New York and they just need a bus ticket to get up there, we'll get them to New York or wherever. And then we have our transitional programming, and people will come into the shelter and then apply to our transitional program. And that's where they have their own individual houses. And that's one of our, it's just a joy to watch people come in there after having been for weeks in the emergency shelter, or not, maybe they didn't go through the shelter, and come in and take advantage of the collaborations we have with Career Source, with Lively and with TCC, and they get in there and we've had them save money and put huge down payments on houses by the time they got out, buy cars, get big time into the Lively Votech, the cosmetology program. People get in there and just thrive, having their own space, their own place. They get to decorate it the way they want to, and nobody's there making noises and rumbling around in their kitchen. And I think it just gives people that calm they need to reevaluate who they are and where they're headed, that you just can't get in the moment of crisis.
Yeah. Yeah, Jimmy, you remember that place we went to in Jacksonville where they had a place like that where these women from similar situations went and learned, cosmetology, esthetician type stuff. It was so empowering to them because they knew not only were they kind of learning a skill, and that's a great thing, and it's something, and what better thing to do than something that makes people feel good about themselves. I mean, what a great job that is.
Yeah.
But they were also learning they were going to be
called Rethreaded. Yeah.
Rethreaded.
Place called Threaded, where sex trafficking victims were basically taught job skills and put to work creating things out of old things. And so it's very symbolic of what things that have been used, and making beautiful things out of those things that have been used, very symbolic of what the whole business was all about. Giving jobs to these women that had been used and making beautiful things out of the women. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I love that. Whitney, I wanted to hear from you because I worry about your safety every day. And I'm, fiercely protective like any parent would be. And especially as, a super feminist mom, I'm very highly attuned to even just little microaggressive comments, looks, that sort of thing. So how do you feel as a young person, going around in the world? Do you feel like there's an awareness now that there may be, well, you probably don't have a whole lot of perspective, maybe just in the 5 or 10 years, maybe you think people are normalizing this, talking about it more? What are your thoughts when you think about women being sexually victimized, and some boys too, just all this topic?
I definitely think that there is still, it's taboo still. I hate to say that, but it's definitely still something that people are afraid to discuss. I don't have any peers that have come to me and said I've been assaulted or whatever. And I hate that, because I feel like I hear a lot of people, middle-aged people, who are finally comfortable saying that they have had that experience. So it's interesting to see that we're still kind of in the scared moment of our lives. And so having no one tell me that they've been through that at my age, it makes me feel like they're not reaching out if they have. And I think that's still something that they're scared of. I mean, we've done so much in the last few years, especially with Me Too, but I mean, it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. And I think we all know that.
Is there a sense do you believe that there's a sense that if it does happen to a girl on college campus, she goes to this bar, gets sloppy drunk, goes home, gets in a car with 3 guys, go home, next thing you know, oh, she's crying rape, as if that didn't actually happen, just because she also probably wish she hadn't made those choices? But do you feel like there's this message still that says, hey girls, when that happens to you, you'll learn your lesson, you won't do that again? Or are we at a point where you think the message is, look, she can't be drunk enough for you to take advantage of, it's not okay, anything other than full consent is a sexual crime? What between those two continuums, where do you think people are?
That's tough, because there's something kind of reactionary after you've been through an assault that makes you want to forget it, makes you want to push it away and just not address it. And so it's not even a oh, I need to right this wrong. It's just a physical you move on. That's just it's a survival tactic, I think. So I think that might be also an issue why people are not coming forward, just in general. But recently,
shame.
Recently, I still see that men don't think consent is a thing, or guys my age. They're like, oh, you don't need that. if you're asking your woman for consent, that she's going to see you as weak. And that's insane. That message is still going around. So I can't say with full honesty that we are, understanding consent fully and understanding that it's illegal to have sex with someone without consent. People
Yeah.
don't understand that, I guess. So.
Yeah, well, you see this, I'm sure, Emily, every time someone tries to report something like that, it shifts to a consent discussion. Because we got DNA now, and whether you've had sex or not most of the time. And so then the whole thing focuses to consent. And then for whatever reason, that shines the largest spotlight in the world on the victim's conduct. I guess we still see that. What happens whenever the people who come to you and get your help, when they need to go into the court system? Do you have lawyers? You have advocates? How far throughout that process do they stay with these people?
We have the advocates that can stay throughout the entire process. Again, it's part of Florida statute that you get to have the advocate present with you during certain portions of the process. We have injunction attorneys in a limited scale that can help with certain cases of SV. They're mostly funded for DV, but we have a strong collaboration with the Florida Coalition Against Sexual Violence, who is able to sometimes offer legal assistance to victims. It's a gap that the whole rape crisis program across the state of Florida is experiencing. It's definitely a barrier. Luckily, we have some pretty good state attorneys in our area, and we have good relationships with them, and we're able to prepare the victims. And one of the things that as an advocate, our advocates try to do is give people a clear picture of who they're dealing with. If I know that this investigator is a little bit rough, I'm going to tell my client beforehand that they're that way. If I know that they're going to be asked a certain line of questions from this defense attorney who's pretty ruthless, we want to prepare them for that.
Yeah.
So we don't want people to go through that process feeling blindsided by the system, because as you all know, they will absolutely walk, and they have every reason to walk. And one of the things I'm thinking about while I was listening to Whitney talk was, there's a certain portion of this narrative that we've got to deconstruct. That's about so much about the women, and I think that what we miss is, and we have a huge prevention component to Refuge Child Services. We're not in all the schools. We're in a lot of the schools. We work with a lot of youth groups. We work with a lot of kids, a lot of teens, and hear that Whitney's describing a great deal. But there's this notion that all this stuff happens kind of in silos, that this woman was here and she did this and X happened, and this over here happened and that's why that happened. And I think that, what we've got to start doing is being able to talk about all the systems in our society that set up and support sexual assault. There's just so much that if you think about it, from the time kids are little, they're conditioned to believe that there's this level of sexual entitlement for men and boys, and that women should just accept that.
Yeah.
And so that creates a real problem for all of us who are trying to help victims, because it's not just the judicial system or the medical care afterwards. It's a deep, deep conditioning in our society that says, God, this is just what guys do.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to live with
biological
it.
thing. Yeah, you have to. It's just a necessary part of our biology, and you can't control it and all this garbage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or men
I think that's insulting to men.
Do.
Yeah, I think it's insulting to men to suggest they don't have any more self-control than to go around, taking something they want just because they simply want it. This leads into this question. This is a great question we have from somebody watching. George says, any proactive recommendations for young women? I have 3 boys and a girl and only have my point of view. My proactive measures are jujitsu and self-confidence. Here's what bothers me about that. Why am I having to change my behavior to keep you from victimizing me? You should be trained not to victimize people. You should be taught that it's never okay to take something just because you want it. It's never okay to have sex with somebody who's not conscious or not giving you their full 100%, unequivocal consent. It's just not okay. So I'm tired of me trying to turn, small young women into, beefed up weightlifting, nunchuckle wielding, terrorists just so they don't get raped. That seems like that's the wrong focus on behavior change to me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I agree with you, Dana. I agree with you 100%. It needs to start with teaching young men how to treat
Yes.
women.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where it starts, is how to not just treat women, but how to view women.
Yeah.
And how to perceive them as human beings that have a right to decide for themselves. And that is, I think, what many men would love to ignore, is that this woman has a right to decide whether or not she wants to, wants me to kiss her, or wants me, whatever. But at the end of the day, young men, a lot of young men, and including myself, I was taught that if you can overcome I was taught that if you can overcome a rejection, then that was a good thing. And then later on, I learned no means no, and that is sacrosanct. That's something absolutely hit the brakes on. But when I was a young man, I'm talking about, 15, 16, 17, 18, the idea was, look, no's just the beginning, and it's the beginning of a negotiation. And that's how a lot of men view it. They view women as a conquest.
Yeah.
And so this is the beginning, is teaching young men. And I see it. I see it these days. I really do. I'm very encouraged. Some of the young men that I meet and some of the families that I see them teaching their young men to be respectful of women, and to treat them kindly, and to respect their decisions and respect their power. And I'm hopeful about our futures, about the future of our children, and particularly my daughters.
I know.
I'm hopeful about the future of my daughters, and I'm paying very, very, very close attention to it. But I think that's where it starts, though, because that's where it starts, is teaching that we've been taught wrong. It's been bad, and it's something that needs to be fixed.
To me, it all ties into this toxic masculinity that people keep hearing about. And nobody likes little buzzwords, but what that really means is it's a concept of what it means to be a man that doesn't serve men any more than it serves women. It's a very outdated concept. And what Jimmy's talking about, because he and I are roughly the same age, I'm a tad older. But I came up from a time where when you said no or gave any resistance, that just meant they dug their heels in. And so they would either ply you with alcohol or something, or they just keep wearing you out and just on and on and on and on until they just broke you down, or you just the hell with it, whatever. But that's not, first of all, you really want somebody who just says the hell with it? This makes you feel like a man? Really? Okay. But no, you would want someone to want you, and you would want them to be respected. And what Jimmy said about treating them as human beings, I want to tell you why that matters so much to me, is because these kind of men that we're talking about, either they're still laboring under this outdated notion of conquest and that sort of thing, or they downright are assholes. Okay. But these are the people who categorize women. You ever heard that there's women you screw around with and there's women you marry? That's someone who doesn't see women as humans. And those are the kind of people who victimize the hell out of people like you see, who maybe come from broken homes, maybe they're abused, maybe they're turned out on the street or whatever. They see them, they put a bead on them. Oh, that's an easy one, because they categorize them as, this is trash. Nobody will miss her. Nobody cares about her. Or, oh boy, I better not mess with her. She's somebody's daughter, or, she looks this way, and so she's a higher value human than this person. So we've got to stop stratifying humans and treat everybody as humans. And let's start with women on that. But the men, I think, need to also check their behavior and say, is this empowering to me, or is this really making me a jerk? Am I really getting good feedback, or am I bullying somebody into what I think looks like respect or love and it's not? But I want to give some more people a chance to give some feedback, because you know me, I'll get fired up. Kimmy, what are you thinking as we've had our discussion today?
Yeah, so I've had a question for Emily, which is, I know you've talked about how there's basically two arms to the refuge house. There is what can we do to prevent this from happening? And then once it happens, what can we do to help? For the community education, and this is kind of in line with the viewer's question of what advice do you have to be proactive? What is the education that y'all are going out into the community to give? Are you giving people, like, I know you're talking about what y'all do, but are you giving folks the education of this is what abuse looks like, and this is how you recognize it, this is how you get out of it? Will you speak a little bit on your education?
Fantastic question.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a broad range of opportunities that we offer for trainings to pretty much any kind of setting you could imagine, professional, like I said, in the schools, community groups, churches, whoever. And what we tailor what the audience wants from us. If you want a domestic violence presentation, then we're going to come in and do signs of abuse, what to do as a bystander, how to help someone, how to support someone, how to take care of yourself while you're loving someone who's going through that. If you want something on, if you're a youth group, or in our schools, for example, we do a lot of bystander intervention training because kids move in packs, right? And so what we want to do is be able to teach kids that if you see something happening, here's some tools you can use to try to stop violence from escalating. For example, if you're in a bar and you see your friend is leaning in on this girl trying to get her drunk and he's talking about taking her home, and you know what his plans are, you don't want to not look cool in front of your friends. You don't, and you want to have social cover. So there's ways to distract your friend. You could say, hey, I think your car's getting towed outside, man, or oh, is that your girlfriend walking in? And do something to distract and give a few minutes to be able to de-escalate that situation. We do presentations on signs of child abuse. We do presentations on sexual violence, the basics, how to help somebody, what our services are. But I think, to me, the most valuable is the stuff that we do with the youth. And we have one project right now that we're doing that targets working with primarily African-American girls in the Griffin Heights and Hope community area to be able to give those girls tools they need to be able to deconstruct social messages that over-sexualize them, and essentially groom them in ways to believe that their lot in life is not to pursue their dream, that they're not that they're not worthy of going and getting that education. And we're bringing in outsiders to come and do motivational speeches with them, and really work hard with the schools and with the community groups in those areas. And I think it's those really personal, concentrated relationships that we build, especially with at-risk youth, that are just critical in turning this thing around. And when you add social media to the mix, I mean, this is a whole different ballgame. We could talk for 2 months on the EmPower Hour about what social media is doing to young people, particularly when it comes to interpersonal violence, sexual assault, dating violence, all of it. So, that's where we really want to focus.
I was thinking about whenever we were in school, there would be these girls and the guys would work on them. Finally, they'd have sex with them, of course. And then the guys would tell everybody. And the next thing you know, it was a gossip that the girl was a slut. And I thought how awful that was, in middle school, maybe high school, to experience. That's when people passed notes and whispered about you at the lockers. Can you imagine there being pictures of that, videos of that, it going viral, it go into all your people. No wonder our suicide rate is what it is. No wonder depression in young people is what it is. It's when I think about it, it sends chills down my spine to think about the potential. And Kimmy, you know, Lori, you know, Jimmy, Whitney, we have people who call us because someone's done that to them. And again, sometimes it is a consensual act, but then the relationship ends and then all this other stuff starts. But why that ties back into sexual assault and domestic violence relationships, if that happens to you in 7th, 8th grade, high school, and you do experience this and you don't, you know, and you do gut through it and get out in the world, you don't think of yourself like you should. You
Wow.
think of yourself as worthy of only other people who treat you that way. You feel like trash, so you're attracted to people who treat you like trash. And this cycle feeds and feeds, and you would pass it down to your children. So it is such a dangerous, dangerous thing whenever our children get victimized by social media. And that is a whole other topic that we need to cover. And I thank you for bringing that up, because that's just gasoline on a big fire.
Mm-hmm.
Lori,
That's a-
well, go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I was just going to say that is a vicious cycle. You're absolutely right. And those are the dangers that we have to, as like Kimmy and I are having to deal with, and Lori has some young children as well, that we've got to deal with. And it is something very, very serious. But I will say this, that the social media with kids is one of the biggest challenges. We're getting a little bit off topic. The biggest challenge for parents today, and it's about teaching. And back to Emily's point, I think is teaching the youth is the most important thing. And by the way, Emily, if you want motivational speakers to come talk to the youth, I'm more than happy to. I'm more than happy
to talk to boys, especially.
Yeah, boys, troubled boys, or any boys that are going down the wrong path. I love to talk to them and let them know that there's a better path. And then also, I also love to talk to young men about really how to perceive their female counterparts, and how to perceive women and young women, and how to treat them. I think that's so important for our society. It's beyond important. So I'm happy to volunteer for that.
No, I
Thank
think you give back so much, Jimmy, but we need more men to step up and help these men, because a lot of them are being raised by single mothers. They are stretched. You add a little bit of COVID to that, and it's a total nightmare. So when we can find men who can help these youth understand that this is a different world, and that is not a manly thing to do. That is a conquest is not a notch in your belt. That's nothing to be proud of. That's, you know, that's a crime. And a lot of
today they need role models of what it means to be a real man.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge confusion over what a real man is. Yeah. And a real man is not somebody that goes out and conquests women. A real man is somebody that loves and cares for and cherishes the women in their life. And that's the mark of a real man. So that's one thing that I'd love to talk about.
Yes, it is. Lori, we've got about 6 minutes to wrap up our show today, and I want to give everybody on the panel a closing remark or opportunity to ask a question. So you've listened to us now for almost an hour. You have sons. What do you think of?
I have a lot of thoughts and questions and everything, so I'll just keep it kind of tight. But I am the mom of 3 boys, and I think about this all the time, and how they're treating me and how they're treating other girls, and just the mindset that's so important, that it starts at home, and also with their fathers, that they're making sure they're treating the mother appropriately and all that kind of stuff, so they can see it and live it. But I also want to give a shout out to all the married women out there and remind them that this happens to you too in a marriage.
Yeah.
Just because you're married doesn't mean it doesn't mean consent every day, every night, all the time.
No, it's not a contract for sex.
It's
and you
not.
didn't give up your personhood just because you got married.
And that's a big thing. And it can really tear you down. And so I just want to remind, married women out there that this applies to you as well.
Yes,
you can get help as well. But back to helping them with jobs and transitioning, do you have partnerships with like Career Source Florida and places like that, so that if you have someone that's looking to get a job, that you can partner them with someone there?
We do
Oh,
partner
great.
with them,
Okay.
and we have relationships that we've sort of cultivated with certain businesses over the years that are sort of used to the safety needs of some of our clients. So they're pretty accustomed to and aren't scared off when an abuser may show up at their job and try to cause problems for them.
Gotcha.
And so we're really, really grateful for those business
Yep.
partners.
Wonderful. Good.
Yes.
That's a big deal. That's
Mhm.
a big one. Whitney, what are your final thoughts today?
Hi. Trying to figure everything out. I loved what you just said about bystanders.
Yeah.
Recently, I mean, I get more and more amped up and all about activism every day. I get worse or better, whatever you want to say, every day.
She's
And
not that honest, let me tell you.
yeah, I feel like I'm surrounded by a lot of apathetic people, or people who are just like, that's a fight I don't want to get into. I mean, you have BLM, you have Me Too, and they're like, this is just a lot. You know, I don't, that's not my fight. I don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
And it's just so important. You have to care. You just have to care. You can't be a bystander, you know, especially when someone's safety is at risk.
It takes a village. And if you notice some of these YouTube videos that you see or whatever, they're all over the place. When people are being victimized, there's a lot of people standing around filming it
Yes.
who aren't trying to do anything to stop it. That is,
That's crazy.
that's almost like a cancer of ethics and values that's penetrating our culture. That's disgusting. And I hope you don't end up having to regret your decision to not do something later because someone got really hurt. So yeah, it's hard to put yourself into situations you never asked to be in, but you would have to hope someone would do that for you. And sometimes you have to make hard decisions in life and be the person your character tells you to be, and not take the easy way out or the funny, cute way out just because everybody in the group's doing it. The more people in the group do something, the more you're likely to do it. That's why they always say it's safer to have one other person walking down that alley with you at night than a whole pack of other people, because they'll let you get hurt. That one person will come to your defense. There's actual psychology behind that. But yeah, that's a great point, Whitney, on the bystander thing. Kimmy, do you have any final remarks? And then we'll get to Jimmy.
Yep, I've got a question, which is, Lori made me think of this. What if you're in a relationship or you're in a situation and you go, I wouldn't quite say that I'm being abused. There's not quite been violence, but I feel like we're in an area that I'm not comfortable with. I feel like I'm not entitled to call refuge house or whatever. What do you say to those people, and what resources are out there? You know, if someone were to call refuge house, are they going to be turned away if violence hasn't happened yet? Or is there still support and counseling that can be there for them?
Fantastic question.
Absolutely. And, you know, everybody finds themselves in that relationship at one point in their life where, you know, this isn't good for me. I don't quite know what it is. It doesn't meet this definition. I don't have a black, you know, there's lots of different ways that Refuge House can still help. And one of the ways is with free counseling outreach. You don't have to come to any of our residential facilities. We have offices in each of our counties where people can come in and just talk. You don't, you know, there's no pressure for us to see you do anything. And your choice about your relationship is strictly yours. But we certainly are there and want to sit and talk to you, and we want to, you know, help you, you know, brainstorm with what you're facing and just be a source of support there. Everything's free, everything's confidential. You know, for people that are struggling financially, if you come to our offices and you need to leave with a couple bags of baby diapers or some groceries or some clothes, we have that available too. So, you know, that's a lot of people are right there on that fence where this relationship just doesn't quite feel right, but I don't look like that girl on the Refuge House brochure with the black eye.
And that's sad, because a lot of times, you know, the abuse, the reason why you don't understand that it's abuse is because they probably isolated you.
Yes.
And they probably cut off your contact to all the people who support you and would give you any sort of, you know, way to question it. So a lot of times, because you're not getting any feedback from other people, you're only hearing from the the abuser or the
Mhm.
person who's not respecting you in your autonomy, you don't know. And so that comes up probably more than a lot of people think, Kimmy. So that was a great, awesome question. And it's good to know
Yes,
that
thank
Mhm.
you.
resources
Thank
out
you.
there. Jimmy, what are your thoughts as we close today?
My final thoughts are, I just want to say thank you to Emily and to the entire crew of the Refuge House.
Mhm.
You all are making a difference. You are very important
Mhm.
community, and have been many, many, many people, many women that have benefited from your services, and I can't thank you enough. Everything you do matters. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't agree any more with Jimmy's comments than that. This has been informative. We could do another whole hour on this.
Absolutely.
And you've given us a lot of resources. We're going to make sure we follow up and post those to all of our social media feeds. But on behalf of everybody in the EmPower Hour and the EmPower Plant and Facing Brooks, thank you, Emily, so much. Emily Mitchem, the Executive Director of Refuge House, for coming on the program today and telling us just what you do to help people when they need it so desperately, so badly. You are that bright ray of hope that makes somebody say, yeah, I'm going to keep trying and I am going to
Yeah.
get out of this and get that life that I want, or I'm going to put this bad experience behind me, process it, and not let this define my future. So you're doing God's work and we thank you for it. So thanks for coming on the show today. Thank you, panel. Again, Whitney Morris, Kimmy Hogan, Lori Finn, and thank you for making an appearance, our empowered, what is it, equitable male leader, Jimmy Faye. Thank you for your input today as well. So thanks everybody. And we will see you next Thursday at 4:30 for another episode of the EmPower Hour. Y'all have a good week.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.